So I will now call to order the City of Newberg Budget Committee meeting of May 7th, 2024. Rachel, would you please conduct a roll call?
Certainly. All right, Mayor Rosacker. Here. Councilor Yarnell Holloman. Oh, absent, excused absence. Councilor Kilberg.
Here.
Councilor Olson.
Here.
Councilor Wheatley.
Here.
Councilor McBride.
Here.
And Councilor Carmen is also an excused absence. Committee member, Chair, Peregrino de Brito.
Here.
And Committee member Brown.
Here.
And Committee member Iborra.
Here.
And Shelley Reimer is on Zoom. Does she want to say hi?
Hello.
And Committee member Nichols.
Here.
Committee member St. Cyr.
Here.
And Committee member Knight.
Here.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay, so now we will do the Pledge of Allegiance.
With our mouths full.
United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, and with liberty. I will now open the floor to public comment. Rachel, did we receive any public comment?
Yes, we have one comment and you have it in front of you.
Thank you very much. Aubrey Nichols.
Dang, Aubrey. Run them on.
Hey. You want me to wait for the timer, Rachel? There it is. There we go. Good evening, Budget Committee. Thank you so much for being here and serving our town in this way. We know that it is not an easy task. My name is Aubrey Nichols. I am the Executive Director of the Newberg Downtown Coalition. I'm here tonight to request $10,000 from the city to support the work that NDC accomplishes year after year. The mission at NDC is to make historic downtown Newberg a destination that enriches the lives of those who visit, live, and work here. Throughout the last year, NDC has successfully run many community events and programs that enrich Newberg. We are proud of the impact that we have on our downtown core and the community at large. We value our partnerships with the city, with Chamber and Taste as part of our stable table, and with CPRD. Many of our works are widely visible to Newberg residents. We do the Wednesday market, Tunes on Tuesday, our public art projects, such as the mural being installed right now down in Ixtapa, and the sculptures that have appeared around town. Some of our work is more tailored to drawing visitors into Newberg, into our downtown core, to increase business activity in the area. This work is especially important as each event has ripple effects that benefit our city. This past March, we hosted the inaugural Taste of Truffle event at the Cultural Center in partnership with Taste Newberg. That event drew out-of-town visitors from across the region and even visitors from Texas and Alabama, bringing along with them a boost in TLT money, increase in revenue for lodging, restaurants, and retail during a season that is typically slow. Next year, NDC is committed to hosting more events similar to Taste of Truffle, specifically events that market our town and support our businesses during those shoulder seasons, like fall and spring, when businesses often feel a lull. We are currently planning 4 events to be spread out throughout the next 4 seasons. NDC is currently in the process of sunsetting the Berg Bucks gift card program, which was funded through ARPA funds received by NDC in 2022. As part of that program, approximately $8,000 was kept in a virtual wallet for the card producing company. This money will be returned to NDC in the next 45 days. We intend to return these funds to the city of Newberg so that they could put the remaining amount of our ARPA money toward whatever program you see fit. We thank the city for their support of this program, and we look forward to giving this money back to you as you so generously awarded it to us. Thank you for your consideration tonight. As a small nonprofit organization, NDC is reliant upon many different funding sources to achieve our goals. Thank you for being one of our partners in fulfilling our mission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aubrey. Okay, we will now move on. Tonight we'll be continuing with the budget. I will now turn it over to Finance Director Katie Strode for staff presentations.
Thank you. We're gonna start on the capital projects, Fund 4, if you turn to page 128.
But before we get started, I'm gonna get the elephant out of the room right now. I have gifts for the budget committee. You get your very own compost.
I like it.
I thought it was a T-shirt.
I like it.
So it was such a hit last year
I thought it was gonna be a
at the
T-shirt.
budget committee meeting.
Ross, I am now,
Other things we talk about.
I'm now glad that I let you carry that all the way up here. by yourself.
We had several conversations about compost. We're
Yes,
gonna use
yes.
that word to refer to this.
Yes.
Thank you so much for this bag of
This
compost.
is for flower pot, from flower in,
Love it.
and will apply itself. You don't need heating fertilizer.
Don't confuse it with your sandwich.
Ellie, we'll make sure and save your bag for you if you
Yeah.
want it.
Yes, I have one for everybody on the committee. And you rest assured, the outside of the bag has not touched what's on the inside of the bag. But it is Class A compost, which means it can be used. Even vegetables.
I love it. That's nice.
Shelley said
I know. I don't really want it near my food.
And I think, it's totally priceless, but it has no value. And, you will make more, or wait a minute, you will make more.
How much does a bag of this cost?
Huh?
How much does it cost?
You- you can go- You can go shovel it up.
Everybody get that? And I,
If you get a load,
I
that's
got-
trailer, then it's
I've got it right here.
$10 a
That's so great. That's awesome.
Well, the funny thing is
Representing
back in the
everyone,
90s
thank you
when
so
they built
much
that
for
system,
this. Appreciate it.
Okay.
it was gonna- I mean, honestly, that was sold to us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good
They
to
were
know.
like, that-
Test. No?
Hello. Mine's on.
I think it's on that.
Wait.
Hello?
Wait, I think it works now.
Yep,
Yeah.
there you go.
Go on
Okay,
there.
we were having technical difficulties. We are moving along now. Go on.
Somebody's got the master.
No. All the compost fun.
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna be using the handout that has the green on it. And this one goes with Fund 4 for the capital projects. So this is just a nice list of the capital projects that are in this budgeted fund, just in an easier format to read, basically. So for the revenues that come from Fund 4, they are all coming from the 3 utility funds. Oops, let me go back to the other one. Let's do the one that has the green. Yeah, that one. Perfect. So all of the revenues in Fund 4 come from these 3 utilities, the wastewater, the water, and the stormwater, and then their SDC funds that go with it. So it's all based off of these project dollar amounts and then their SDC eligibility. So we've done the math on all of it. And so the transfers in from the SDC funds are based on the eligibility of each of the utilities portion of the projects that are eligible, and then the remaining amount comes in from that utility in there. I don't think we're there. Yeah, we'll save that for the SDC funds. So that's really all of the revenue that's in this fund. And all of the expenditures in this fund are those exact projects. So if anybody had any questions on next year's capital project list that we're going to be doing for stormwater, wastewater, or water.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Is there a simple explanation why the SDC percentage varies so much between projects?
he's been waiting for it.
A simple explanation.
Here is the simplest way I have figured out how to explain this. The amount that part of the system increases by because of the capital work is the only amount that is allowed to be SDC eligible. And now I'm going to use a prop. See my nameplate here? This is about to be a new capital project, and I'm expanding the overall size of this piece of equipment by this amount. So only this amount is SDC eligible. How was that?
It was wonderful.
Okay, and I'll use my prop again. This is now a road surface. If the repair work on this road only increased the width of the road by this tiny sliver, only this tiny sliver amount is the SDC eligibility. If, however, this is now a pipe and it doubles its capacity, it would be 50% SDC eligible. Did that help?
Again, thank you very much for that explanation.
Questions on any projects?
I'm going to just make a comment or ask a question just to, I don't think everyone had access to that PowerPoint that you shared with us. It's related to this, right?
Yes.
So, and I trust that your team has been in the last year or so looking around, what are the higher needs that require this investment, and have been able to shorten the list, knowing, and I'm asking this because someone in the population may be like, hey, we know of this project that needs to be done here near my house, but it's not funded here. So I guess I'm trying to present, or have you present, that you guys, your team has done a thorough study of return to investment and impact in population by dollars, whatever methodology that you use to come up with this short list that would fit in this year's budget, correct?
Right. So they have gone through this list. Prior to this list was probably this long. And many of these, such as the House Bill issue that we're dealing with, or some of those, the House Bill 2001, are mandated that we have to do by either the state or federal government. So those take a higher priority. The second thing that takes the next priority is imminent failure or damage to the environment or potential health concerns with the community. So those are the next higher priorities that we take a look at. And sometimes things that appear to be bad are not imminent. So they can continue to stay on the shelf a little bit longer so that we don't overburden ourselves. A few years ago, the CIP, for those that may have been on the committee, CIP list was 4 times the size. And we overburdened ourselves, and some of them didn't get done. Some of it is protection of our own city investment. Without doing it, we are costing ourselves money year after year after year without doing that, or protecting some of our assets as well from degradation. So these are the higher priority items. We actually go through the list and we prioritize them. And if they don't meet a certain priority, they go on the shelf. So these have been reviewed multiple times by myself, by the city manager, by Katie, by our engineering staff, by our maintenance staff, our operations staff, and these are the top ones that are on here.
Verified and validated. Thank you. Yes.
And another
Will?
thing is that the storm master plan update, actually, if we don't do that one, it's barring us from possibly getting federal grants because we have to make sure that some of those master plans get updated periodically. As we've discovered to our cost, sometimes congressionally directed spending dollars, you're barred if you don't show your master planning is up to date, which is a bit frustrating, but that's the thing that we've ran into.
Question, is there an issue at all then of master plans for wastewater and water projects? Or are they recent enough to not be a concern yet?
Those plans were updated recently and they're more up to date. One of the issues we run into with the stormwater master plan is mandated by city ordinance to be updated every 5 years. Whereas the sanitary or wastewater master plan, sewer master plan, water master plan is not mandated on a date frequency to be updated. But, you know, it's good to update them every 10 years, no longer than 10 years. But when we recently did some of the House Bill 2001, they were updated and we feel that those are most current.
I think you've mentioned before that the laws around stormwater have also been changing. So whereas sewer and some of the others are more established, so that's probably maybe why the 5 years was in the code.
I believe so, because if you take a look around town, we've got a lot of stormwater catchments, I think, and I can't number them off, but I think Preston can. We have like 160 some storm detention facilities in town, where 5 years ago, we probably had 30. And 5 years prior to that, we had none. So that's changing and some of the regulations are changing that trickle down effect affects us in how we deal with it.
Any other questions on the CIP?
I just have a question on, so, I mean, I know this because I work for Water District over in Clackamas, and we have a bunch of grants that we are getting from the state and the feds. Have we actually looked into grant funding of like any of these projects?
We have and actually have secured some funding, whether it's federal target monies or other things for some of the, to help us with some of these projects.
We've recently been told by Salinas's office that we are under consideration for congressionally directed spending for the pond covering project. So we've made it past the first hurdle. Now it's competitive, but with a bit of luck, we're going to get money for that CIP project. And if we do get that, that will probably cover most of that project, but time will tell.
All right.
I think we can move along if no one has further questions.
All right, let's move to page 132, which is the transportation or the streets capital project. You can actually keep that sheet up on there and just use the other, the other page. Yes. So this one will go with the other CIP list you have. That's shorter. And this one is related to Fund 18 for the Street Capital Project Fund. And again, the revenue in this fund comes directly from the street fund or the street SDC fund, depending on the eligibility or whatnot on this. And then it has a little bit of interest in here as well. And then again, the expenditures in this fund are all just these CIP projects in there. And you could see on here, the biggest project that we're doing next year is is using tough money for pavement maintenance program. And then we have just some other small street projects that we're doing. That is in the street fund. We haven't gotten to that one yet. Yeah.
I got a question. To me, still having 4.5 miles of gravel roads is kind of an embarrassment to the city. And I realize that's the most expensive upgrade and costs the most per mile by far. And so, and we went over this in rate review that, you know, the maintenance fund goes towards sealing the moderate streets, but how many more years are those gravel roads going to stay gravel?
It's, well, as you had mentioned, the cost to upgrade a gravel road to the standards required
Mm-hmm.
are extensive. Having to do ADA upgrades and then upgrading all of the utilities underground, reconstruction of the roads. Most of our gravel roads are still in existence, were constructed back at the turn of the century, the other century. And they do not have sufficient road base to survive, so it's complete reconstruction. And when you do that, it starts bumping the number up significantly on that. With reduced revenues from gas tax money that we're facing and trying to maintain the quality of the roads that we do have the investment in, it's a tough balancing act. We have had some individual neighborhoods that are faced gravel roads come forward on a local improvement district, and we have removed some gravel roads over the past several years. However, it's just a funding issue, a significant funding issue.
As a long-term resident and the mayor, I would like to remind the people that live on those streets that you bought your house sitting on those streets. And if you want to see how much he just mentioned the local improvement district. And that means that the homeowner gets to participate in the cost of building that street. So ask a real estate agent how much more your house would sell for if it was on a street that was paved. And that's approximately the amount of money you can expect to be charged in the event that that street does get paid. Each homeowner is going to get a big bill that's going to help pay for that road. So that's why it's never been done in the past. Those are the exact reasons that people who live there didn't want to be part of that.
So I did a back of a postage stamp calculation based upon Elliott Road type thinking. And I think you'd be looking at about $12 million to completely clean that up. And that would be a huge challenge. Now, I used to think before the water plant bill exploded out of control that we could come out and council willing, go out for a bond to help with that section. That was my thinking. But now with the way the water plant cost has gone, I don't even see that that's on the table. So right now, I don't have an idea.
And I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember, where are these roads located? Because I don't know. Are they downtown, Newberg?
They're all west of Main Street.
West of Main Street, understood. And there's a creek that goes there too, right? So there's that implication of, there you go.
Shalem Creek. So the gravel roads are located west of Main Street, south of 4th Street
Okay.
or 3rd Street. Actually, there's Lincoln. She's getting it up on the map there. So it's south of 3rd Street, and that section that you see up there above Newberg Natural Foods, Lincoln Street, in that area, Franklin, Sheridan, are all gravel that are back in there. There's a couple that have been turned to pavement, and then West 5th, South Lincoln, in that area, there is gravel streets as well. We have about, total lane miles is about 4 miles, about 2.5 miles of street that's still gravel.
Thank you. Okay, so let's move along. This is not a budgeted project, so again, I'll ask the same question for the ones for the transportation. You've looked at ROI, impact, priorities, did the same type of study for us to have these four projects, correct?
It is Main Street in Illinois, intersection study. That's, anybody that's driven through that intersection knows how difficult it can be. And an instance of, accidents, crashes that happen there. It is a real difficult conflict, and we're taking a look at how we can better manage that intersection with a state highway. So that's one, and that's because, that's on the list because of that. North College and Aldercrest, the foothills, that's an improvement, that's a portion of our cost, along with the state, for a project to improve sidewalk pedestrian capabilities north of where the project ended a couple of years ago. With that, handicap ramp improvements, that goes hand in hand with the tough improvements, because when we do the tough improvements on streets, we have to do the ADA ramps. That's also going to help support what we have planned for a concrete crew to do that work in-house. We can reduce the cost by 50% or greater by doing it in-house with our staff, and also provide other opportunities throughout town for infill and things like that. Pavement maintenance program, one of the things that the city manager is going to institute with us to help us identify those streets is doing a survey of the existing streets, the worst streets in town. Anybody that's driven on them, we have three kinds of streets in town: gravel, macadam, and if anybody knows what macadam is, it's basically oil rock. They put rock down and they oil it, and put rock down and they oil it. That's macadam. And a lot of that rock came from the river. And then we have asphalt streets in town. We don't have any real concrete ones. So we take a look at it and see which ones are going to benefit. Does it require a full depth reconstruction where you have to go down 18 inches, rebuild the substrate under the road, bring it up, compact it, and completely rebuild it? Or is it simply we can grind the rough asphalt off and restore it back? And what kind of life will we get out of that? Will it last 5 years, 8 years, 20 years? You know, we expect to get a 20-year life out of a reconstructed street, 20 to 25 years. So again, we weigh all of these factors, take a look at all of them. We're going to survey it and take a look at it and do a methodical approach to improving those streets where we get the most for our money that's in there. For those that don't know, the price of asphalt has quadrupled over the last 10 years per ton. So that shortens our buying power with the asphalt.
Remind me, asphalt is petroleum based, right?
It's oil-based, petroleum-based.
Right on. So, any more questions about these projects?
I don't
Oh,
see,
there is,
I don't,
go on.
I see a write-up on the red speed light enforcement project, but I don't see it in the CIP.
Oh, yeah.
The revenue will go in the other direction, although it's all about safety. But we don't know how much revenue will be precisely yet. So we have a placeholder in the budget that the installation isn't costing us anything to build.
Oh, but it's part of the street capital?
It's part of it's a CIP project in that sense. And there may be some small miscellaneous costs, but the bulk of it is going to eventually be revenue generating. It will go in the other direction.
Okay. Didn't we have red light camera before? And then we took it out? And then we're putting it back in?
Different intersection.
We had red light cameras at the intersection of Springbrook Road and Highway 99.
Yeah.
And when ODOT utilized South Springbrook Road for the bypass route, they mandated that the red light cameras had to be taken out.
Okay, okay.
Okay, we'll move on then to the wastewater fund, which is on page 90. Sorry, Rachel. I'm just waiting for her to get the, there we go. So for the revenue for the wastewater fund, the main revenue that had an increase in here is the user fees. And this is what you pay on your utility bill that everyone pays in. And this just had a rate increase of 3.5% based on the rate review committee. And the other one on here is the other fees that had a little bit of a adjustment based on our actuals that we're getting. Those other fees are entities like porta potties that come and dump at our sewer stations. So that's just extra fees that we're getting on that. So I adjusted the revenue close to what our actuals are. And that's kind of the gist for the revenues. Did you want to talk about the engineering?
Yeah.
On page 91?
So on the expenditure side, you'll see that fairly closely, they followed my direction to try to not increase anything if they could avoid it. The only thing that you may notice is that the salaries and wages went down slightly. That's because instead of having a city engineer in-house as a staff member, we're going to experiment with having a private company come in and provide city engineering services and becoming our engineer of record to see if we can try to be more efficient on how we actually do some of our larger projects. So we're going to give that a try. That's why you see the labor decrease. But apart from that, there's some small inflationary increases represented in the columns, but not a lot of other significant changes. And so I'm speaking as the city engineer right now, of course, because currently we don't have one.
And then on page 92, did you have a question before we move on to that?
I was just gonna piggyback on what you're saying, that, we had budgeted last year as well for, the professional services. So did we end up using it, or was it in the secondary budget? No.
No,
right?
and you can see on the professional services, the actuals for the last 2 years
Was
have
it-
been zero.
Was zero, right?
Yeah, so there's definitely room in there for us to actually spend in the budget this year.
Okay,
Yeah, and we split that engineering cost over four utility funds.
Got it.
Yeah.
I got a question. What are we purchasing on the capital outlay line item that's the same that we budgeted last year?
So previously, we were using things like secondhand equipment. We weren't using, our inspectors didn't have the gear that they need to have. And so we purchased last cycle a lot of different small capital equipment items. We purchased some of the measurement and the same levels that ODOT uses. So we would have like with like. Now, we decided to let that ride for another year because we may have flood damage to some of our equipment and we'll have to replace it. But I'm not expecting that we will always have that capital number. We'll have to see how it goes after the end of this cycle. Once we're back in our normal digs and once we finish retooling the engineering department, because actually we're in the middle of completely restructuring the engineering department to try a different business model.
I know one of the pieces of equipment that he's talking about is compaction testing equipment. Anytime we reconstruct a road or do any significant compaction, we have to bring it up to a certain compaction number. And we were having to hire that out to contractors. Having the equipment ourselves reduces that cost. And we can do our testing on site ourselves without having to rely on a contractor to do that.
Okay, thanks.
So page 92, I'll let you take it over here for
Oh,
operations.
page 92. I'm taking the place of Craig Pack, our operations superintendent. He's on vacation, so bear with me. There's no changes. Next question. That was one of the things that we had talked about, and he feels very confident in the fact that, with the same budget, the only caveat that we have is the pending PGE increases for the next year, whether or not they happen. But we feel confident that we can meet those challenges with what we have in the budget at this time. The only other thing that you would see is the capital outlay, and that is, I have a list of 184 items on here that's been identified. Our wastewater treatment plant is approaching 35 years old. With any mechanical equipment, you can imagine that things run at a wastewater treatment plant 24/7. Many of the things are redundant. We have 2 pumps or 4 pumps for moving things from one side of the plant to the other. Some things we have no redundancy in. And our method is, at this point in time, is we're gonna run them till they die. And with redundancy, we have the ability to let it die, move into the next one, and then work on replacing the other one. But we do have to have funds available for those things that are not redundant, such as a chlorine analyzer for our wastewater discharge to make sure that the water's clean when we discharge it, things like that. We have to be able to have the funding available to replace it immediately. Other things that can cause immediate failures are the rollers on the compactor or the composter that we do, the chains that we use, the conveyor chains to move the materials around within there. So some of those things are just wear parts that come, and we've got them put in cycles, a 4-year cycle, a 5-year cycle, a 3-year cycle. So those are where those are. And then again, they've also have the savings plan that we put together with other departments to save that money up over time for those big costs when we need it. Like the composter has a blower mechanism, but we have redundancy. So when one goes down, we can still continue to run. It doesn't shut the plant down. So that's the mode that we're going to be operating in, is with redundancy, continue to operate, but having funds available should we have a catastrophic failure.
Any questions? Any further?
I just have one question on line the building grounds and maintenance. We spent $48,000 in 2023. And then we budgeted 131.
That, yes, that's a roof.
Oh, okay.
So for building grounds and maintenance, we have replaced a couple of roofs. This is another roof on one of the main buildings. 35 years, it's lasted a long time. It's a metal clad roof, but it's deteriorating to the point where we're gonna plan on replacement this next year.
Oh, so it's one that we're replacing last year, another one that we're replacing this year.
Right. We got half of it done. Or one building done, and there's 2 buildings.
Okay,
And
Preston's
we're
gonna
gonna
come up.
play musical chairs here a little bit.
He's gonna do the maintenance part of this budget for this fund.
Hello again. There was very little changes to maintenance. We moved some money around. We're trying to condense some of our funds, make it simpler to budget, and minimize the budgeting errors that we were suffering from. There is a $15,000 overall increase. That is because we are implementing a maintenance program to help take care of the wastewater, water treatment plants, and all the pump stations, all the reservoirs and all that. We don't have the staffing to be able to take care of that. Operations doesn't have the staffing that can take care of it, so we're gonna be hiring an outside contractor to maintain the vegetation in those facilities. And that is what that increase is for. You will see a change in the capital outlay. What we are doing, that's that vehicle and equipment replacement program that we are setting up. That money was normally funded each year in the contingency line item. We are moving it into the capital outlay, and then whatever we save will roll into contingencies.
Yes, I have a question, just for understanding. So
This equipment and repair and maintenance that you mentioned is line 566000. Is that correct?
So the capital outlay one?
No, no, no,
No,
for
it's-
the repair and maintenance where you were hiring,
Oh.
someone to do the ground maintenance. Is it the
Five
line that
three
went
three
from?
zero four five, the maintenance
Oh,
agreements.
533405, okay. Okay, thank you. But, this one that I'm talking about is, 566000, equipment repair and maintenance.
Yep.
Also, another one that went from 11,000 to 27,000.
So if you look up at the line just above it, the vehicle
Got
maintenance,
it.
we merged those two together because
Yeah.
equipment and vehicle expenses were getting mixed around in both of those when they were getting invoices processed. And this is just going to simplify it and keep everything in one bank.
Perfect, thank you.
So, back to the, capital outlay for vehicle, do you have specific vehicles in mind? I mean, it's 687,000. So is that amount based on X number or X types?
Yeah, so we have service trucks that are out of date. We have bucket trucks that are out of date. Our Vector truck is, one of them is pretty worn out. Our sweeper is also 18 to 20 years old. So those, best management practices every 5 years to replace your sweeper. And we spend probably $40,000 to $50,000 a year in maintenance on that piece of equipment. So that needs to be replaced. There's a lot of different vehicles are split 4 or 5 different ways. So I have a list of 200 vehicles that I'm managing and pieces of equipment that I'm trying to get into a solid replacement program. And that is something we're going to be presenting next year in depth on. But those are just some of the vehicles and equipment we'll be replacing.
On that line item, it says ARPA IT servers. Is that supposed to be something else?
I don't see that.
610001?
That was the typo one. Did he get the old one?
Mm.
Oh, it says it up there.
Well,
So that was a typo we caught, but I somehow didn't get updated on yours because it's
Oh,
updated in mine. Sorry.
Yeah, the printed version has the correct one.
Just replaced a sweeper with an electric sweeper.
Yep.
And I know we had to junk our old one or bust it up.
Correct.
So we're gonna have 2 sweepers now?
We've always had 2 sweepers.
Right.
The one we got on a grant. So it covered 50% of it since an electric vehicle costs 50% more than a regular one. We need to have 2 operational for redundancy because we have to meet our sweeping requirements to meet our TMDL for the state stormwater requirements. Probably not. We probably want to have something that is diesel ran so that in case of power outages or emergencies, we can run.
This budget meeting, I'm sorry.
Any other question?
If no more questions?
Sorry, I have one question. Is there any cost recovery for the vehicles that are being sunsetted? Are they being auctioned or are they being sold off to create revenue in any way?
Yes, so what we're doing right now is we are selling them off, using some of the revenue to purchase some more of the vehicles. Our goal is regular vehicles, pickups and stuff like that are trying to be on a 5-year replacement plan. For the purchase price that we get as a state agency, we can turn them in 5 years and lose little money on them. And that is the plan we're trying to get to, but some of our vehicles are from the 90s. So it's going to take a little bit to get this program up and running.
Got it, thank you.
It had been our dream to try to get a holistic fleet pool going for this year. We ran out of time. So we weren't able to figure it out for this year, so we didn't do it. That means combining the fleet lines from all departments into one
Fun.
pool, which would enable us to plow the money back more effectively every year. So if we're able to succeed this year, we're going to come back next year with a lot more presentation information about creating a unified fleet pool. And that will be more efficient financially.
Thank you. Any other, oh, there you go.
Just a quick question. I like the idea of unifying and, pulling it all together. Have we thought about maybe doing that with other cities so that we could maybe get a lower price point because we're buying in bigger volume and maybe buy directly from the factory?
So we're able to piggy off of like City of Portland, state purchasing contracts, so whatever prices they're getting, we get.
Excellent.
There's not a street sweeper in the wastewater budget, is there?
I believe when it was originally purchased, it was 25% amongst all 3 or 4, because it's used in construction projects to help clean up the streets after we trench it and drop in water lines or sewer lines or storm lines. We have to have the sweeper come through and clean up all the debris. And we're doing some of those projects and repairs.
Any more questions, Mr. Mayor? No, you good? Okay, hearing none.
Okay, I'll quickly go over on page 94. We have our debt service. And you can see the wastewater has 2 different loans. We have the effluent reuse loan and the DEQ loan, which is our big wastewater one, that we're hoping to eventually pay down. But it's probably our biggest debt that we have right now. You can see based on the principal payment there. The transfers that you see here are going to that Fund 4, the Capital Projects Fund that we just looked at. And then the reserves here, we have 2 of the funds here, the ones that end in 1 and the one that ends in 2. For the contingency assigned for vehicle replacement, public works maintenance, that first one there, the 451. That one is the rollover funds from this fiscal year from that capital outlay that Preston had just talked about for the savings plan for the vehicles. And then the one below it, the 401, that is the rollover fund for operations for the capital rollover that we talked about for their funds. So that's where their saving money is going to be going each year. Yeah, of course.
So just so you know that the effluent reuse line item and the DEQ line item, that's the big debt that you've sometimes heard us talk about at rate review.
Mhm.
That's the debt which is 20 to 30% of the relevant rate charge. So that's the debt that if we could get rid of it, it would reduce the cost on the rates bill.
And what's the balance on the wastewater loans?
I think that for that DEQ one, I think it's around 19 or 20 million. It's under, so it's probably around 19 million at the end of this year. Effluent. Jen, can you look up the effluent balance? Yeah, we'll find that out shortly. All right, we will move on if there are no
Move on.
questions.
Yep.
I have a,
Oh, there he goes.
yeah, it's not specific to this, but where is the $2 million cost for the water rights in all this?
That's in the water fund.
In the water.
Yeah, well, it's actually split, so some of it is in the water fund and some of it is ARPA. So that's in Fund 99. So it was partially funded from both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's okay. Yeah, that's fine. We can come back to it. So we'll move on to page 97. We'll talk about the wastewater SDC fund that goes with that.
Can you stop us one time, gang?
That one I don't know off the top of my head. Yeah. So for the revenues for the wastewater SDC, just looking at what we've collected and knowing that with their new SDC methodology, we're expecting to receive less wastewater SDC revenue in the future. So this number we reduced quite a bit. And that subsequently reduces the interest earned in there. And you can see based on the beginning fund balance, there is quite a chunk of revenue in there that we could use for future capital projects. And then for the debt service, the SDC fund pays for part of that effluent loan in here. You can see that part of it was SDC eligible. And so we pay the debt and interest that's eligible here. The transfers are paying for the SDC portion of the capital projects that we saw in Fund 4. And then the rest are just in contingency, waiting for a project that we can spend it on. Any questions? All right, let's move on to the water fund on page 100. Oh, no, that's okay.
I'm probably gonna kick myself for asking, but on the very last line on page 97, the payment of the debt service total, I mean, the total has gone down.
Yes, our principal, we're slowly paying this one off, so our principal and interest always varies based on the amortization schedule on this one.
So this number represents what we've spent or what we plan to spend to pay.
For principal only, and then interest is on the next page.
So why wouldn't we pay the same amount of principal each year? Your payment stays the same, right? No?
No, for a lot of our loans, it varies based on just different payments. A lot of our payments change based on the amortization schedule. Yeah.
Yeah, just to clarify, they're not like a home loan where you.
Yeah,
where you
exactly.
Get an interest rate and your payment is always that.
We have a couple loans like that. The bypass loan is always the same. The communication tower debt is always the same, but our other loans, we have various rates that we pay every year on that.
One more question there?
So do we choose that, or is that like a state law that it's a variable rate, or
I
why
think
is it?
that was how we chose it whenever it was done.
Can we then choose a fixed rate on any other loans going forward in the future? Would that be smart to
Yeah,
do?
probably.
Okay,
And some of it too, the total payment might be pretty close. It's just you might be paying less principal and then more interest in the beginning. Because as you get closer to the end of the loan, you're paying more principal and less interest. But right now, we're still pretty far away from the end, so we're paying a lot less principal and a lot more interest. Yeah. So there's that too.
And I'm just gonna say it because I look at this and I see in this fund that we have $13 million in funds. And I know that this is, so when I look at my finances, if I have $13 million sitting in the bank and I have a debt that I'm paying a not so great interest of $19 million, I'm gonna chase that debt as fast as I can. And I know that's what we're trying to do in a general sense, and I don't understand of city laws and what you can do with them. I mean, I'm learning as I
Yeah.
go, right? But is there any reason why we can't use some of this chunk to go after this debt?
And we might be able to. So that was something that we were potentially looking at. We have to do a lot of research to go back in time to see if that project was on the SDC list. And we have to look at capacity, if any SDC funds were used previously. And so we'd have to determine the amount of SDC money that was eligible for it.
Because I know interests are not great right now if you go after a loan. I understand that, but there was a period of time a few years back where on our AMR or RMA, whatever it is, that you get a really low at the beginning, it looks great, but then,
Yeah.
varies, and maybe that's what happened here. I don't know. I was,
Yeah.
not a part of it, but I would love for you guys to do a research to see if we can get out of a situation. I know you guys are on it. Go on. Well,
So under Oregon law, the key thing for these funds is, was it on the SDC table back in the day? If it was, and if at that time they did not use the maximum possible share of SDC revenue to buy the infrastructure, we legally could still do that today. But we've always had more and more projects to do. So we've never had a chance yet to go back and do the research from those days and figure out, was it on the SDC list and how much was used? Because you're right, we could buy that down a bit by that mechanism. Now, on the other hand, the mayor came up with a new idea recently, which might stop us from doing that. And this is a rather brilliant idea. And it's a bill original, which is potentially we might be able to use some of these large volume deposits to lend ourselves money to help capitalize the water plant. So we need to investigate that and weigh up those two options.
Yes, and yes, I think it's a great idea. I know that your team has a goal of debt reduction, right? And just kind of trying to keep an eye on that as we look at this budget. It's, ensuring that we are meeting the council goal of that as well. Okay.
Excuse my ignorance, but where is this money kept? Like, is this just in a bank where you get like what percentage on something like that?
This is more of a their question, but there's an account called, one of the accounts is called the LGIP. And I don't know where that exactly is stored in terms of what securities that represents. But there's a couple of funds. There's some standard US banking arrangements with the US Bank, but there's also the LGIP account. And Ted, you might know more about that than me.
It's a state account that you earn, what, I think it's 5.5% right now, if you put it in that.
Yeah, that's where
Okay.
most of ours is living at, is in LGIP. Yeah, so can you just total this principal and interest really quick? Okay, 2.89 million is left on the effluent. Mhm.
That's
The
what's
effluent,
left, and
not
we have
the
13 million. Why don't we pay that baby off now?
So 13 million SDCs. You always have to look at that.
Oh,
Remember the
yeah.
SDCs? You just don't get to do whatever you want with them, and it breaks my heart.
Yeah, and that one, we're already using the maximum SDC for that, so that one we wouldn't be able to use any SDC money to pay that off.
All right, no more questions on this? Or if anybody has more questions? Okay, carry along.
Okay, let's move on to water fund on page 100. So for the resources here, again, the main stream of revenue here is the user fees that you pay on your water bill. And that had a 5% increase for next year based on the rate review committee that was passed. And that's really the only change that we've had in the revenue for this fund. And then did you want to talk about the engineering expenditures?
Thank you. And then on the expenditure side, it's actually very similar to the last engineering table you saw. There is a proportionate reduction based upon outsourcing the city engineer work to a private firm. And then there are a few modest increases based upon inflationary effects, but it's the same scenario as the other one in our attempt to be more efficient.
On to you.
Got a
Bob.
question on the bank. On the bank piece, seems odd that it's going down from 2023 to 7,000. I'm thinking bank fees went up, right, Katie?
They did, but for just looking at the engineering fees that they actually take, they don't take what a lot of the other departments do. So we've just kind of trued it up to actual usage. Yeah.
So you'll see that bank fees within engineering as a more volatile number than the consumer bank fees and credit card charges in the other areas. It depends upon the contractors that we're working with. And so as CIP activity ramps up, you might see the actuals come up with it. If CIP activity comes down, you're going to see them decrease. So this is a more like a real world volatility rather than a steady increase.
I have a question about the non-potable water users. So the golf course is the only user at this point in time, and it states that we're looking for future users. Are there plans for future users coming down the line? And then is there a different payment structure for non-potable water versus potable water?
There's actually multiple users now. Crestview Crossing is now on our non-potable water system. And we've also been able to extend it as part of the Crestview Drive improvements to tie it in out onto Springbrook Road. We're still taking a look for other users. And future development of that Springbrook area will bring on additional users for that system. But the primary user of the recycled non-potable water out of the wastewater treatment plant is the golf course.
Oh, thank you.
What line
Where's the reuse system on this? Has a no requirement.
is it? Oh,
As far as revenue,
As far as whatever.
No, it was just mentioned in the narrative in here. So that's all combined in the user fees
Right.
that we receive.
the maintenance of the recycle system is included in the funds for the wastewater treatment plant operations. The funds for the non-potable Otis Springs resource at the bottom of the hill is out of the water operations fund.
You want to talk about operations? Oh, yeah, we've got Dan.
We got Dan here. Dan Wilson, our water treatment plant superintendent. There's a book for you.
And this is for page 102.
Because the numbers are the same. Okay.
102.
My numbers this year are exactly the same as last year. We've had, the only one I'm really concerned about is the utility budget fund. We've increased it every year basically on cost of living, based on, cost of living. But we haven't really spent it all. So we just left it the same. But then, we just had a meeting with them and it's supposed to go up 9.9% in 2024. So we'll see where we are. But other than that, the budget numbers stayed exactly the same.
Yeah.
Well, it actually was a little lower.
What's that?
It's actually a little tiny bit smaller number than the year before. Your total?
I don't know why. That's,
Wages.
I'm just being
It's
picky
prob-
about the number.
it's probably wages.
Yeah, I think it's wages. Yeah, his materials and services, I think, looks the same. Yeah.
That's what the guys in operations have done. There's no other operations budget in the United States where they kept it almost identical to the year before. Maybe in the galaxy, but we can only speak about the country.
Very, very good.
Yeah, our materials and services and our maintenance. We spent the last 3 years, we haven't spent a lot of our budget the last 3 years based on the fact that we were gonna build a new water treatment plant. And then we learned that we were going to build a new water treatment plant. So some of the maintenance that we had been putting off because things were going to be replaced have had to be done. here. We've done quite a bit this year, and there will be more next year. Plus, there's a lot of emergency management stuff that's coming down the pike with water systems and IT security and those kinds of things that are going to have to be, the security of the system is being mandated by the EPA to be upgraded. That is, we're still fluctuating about what it's going to cost, but it is going to cost something.
So, I thought we were going to build a water plant sometime in the future.
At some point in the future, we are, but
Okay.
at this point, we're dealing with.
You gotta
equip-
maintain, right?
Yeah, we still have to maintain it, and we're dealing with, we said, at this point, it's 10 years in the future instead of 3 years in the future. And so we've got equipment that's 50, 60 years old. We got a building that's 70, 80 years old. Those things have to be done. Like this week, I'm having a roof put on the water plant. It's amazing how much roofs cost.
But they had literally kind of gone into a full pause for a minute,
Right.
waiting for the new plant to start, which should have been happening now.
Yeah, that's,
Totally understand. You have to
yeah,
continue to
if,
maintain it.
if people get a notice to say they can't use any water, you guys will be answering questions.
Okay, any other questions on the water operations and water maintenance? Hearing none, thank you so much, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. And Preston's coming back to do the water maintenance.
Okay, so basically same thing. We moved some funds around in a few different locations, trying to simplify the budget for our staff. And then there was an overall increase of $30,500. $500 of that increase is for our utilities that are going up due to PGE. And the other 30,000 is to kind of help with the landscape maintenance for all the different facilities for water treatment. They have the reservoirs, the well field, their facility. There's quite a bit of acreage that adds up very, very fast. Also, as you'll see in capital outlay, the money that's normally in contingency has been moved there. The money you see in contingency this year is the funds we are rolling over because they have already been allocated to a vehicle that's on order, and won't arrive till next year.
Any questions on water maintenance?
All right, thanks. And then for our water debt service, we have the 2015 refunding bond. And I believe this one is going to be paid off. Jen may have to look this up for me. Can you look up when the 2015 refunding is paid off? I believe it's 2028. It's coming up very quickly. And you can see that because the principal we're paying is very large compared to the interest. So that's how you know we're getting to the end of that loan. And that one, I think we were planning on that falling off right when we were originally planning on doing the water plant because it was going to free up debt space, but so it still will. It just yeah. So I think it's in 3 years. I think it's 2028. There's 3 years left. Yeah. That one will be paid off, so that's good news. And then the reserves here are also the rollover funds here for public works maintenance and operations, so the 262. is for maintenance. That's their rolled over capital outlay that they're saving for. And then the 160,000 is for operations. Any questions? All right. We'll move to the water SDC fund. And that's on page 107. So for the revenues here, again, I've looked at what we've been collecting for SDCs, which hasn't been anywhere close to the 1.2 million. So I upped it just a little bit based on the new SDC methodology. We're expecting to receive more water SDC revenue. So I put it around the 900,000, just based because we're lower, but not quite at the 1.2. And then kept the rest of the revenues pretty much the same. And this one really has almost no fund balance. You can see there's only 318,000. We use primarily most of this for debt payment. So on the next page on 108, you can see this pays for a portion of that effluent reuse loan and the 2015 refunding bond. So again, we're hoping to start generating more water SDC revenue for the future because that would be helpful for the water treatment plant if we could get more SDC revenue in for this. Any questions on that? Like a debt repayment or? Oh, for the Parks and Rec? Oh, that's non-potable. Yeah, this is the debt on here.
The fluent reuse is not the non-potable system?
Isn't the revenue included in the water and sewer?
Yeah, I think the revenue is included in the water fund for the non-potable. But it's not, I think you guys said that it's all in one
Both the
pot.
potable and
Yeah.
non-potable water is metered through a water meter. They look exactly the same, except one's purple.
The water meter, not the
Water meters, and that's what we use for metering. It's actually metered.
Right. I might be able to get you that number though, not tonight, but I could talk to utility billing.
Yeah,
And I think that they
Will's
can,
on it. Will's gonna get it.
all right.
I'll go see Sharon.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we have a report, we can get that for you.
Would you like that annualized or a certain month? Yeah, got it.
And for that same question, so if I pay $1 for a potable water, do I pay $1 for a non-potable water? Or is it a cost difference?
Or is it cost
A little less.
It's less,
Yeah,
a little less.
Okay,
Doesn't require as much treatment.
I think carry on.
all right.
No more questions.
We'll move on to stormwater. That's on page 110. And same thing for this. The user fees are the biggest part of the revenue here, and that had the change of, I believe, 6.5% was what the rate review committee passed. So there, you'll see that increase here in the budget. And we had all of the other revenues stayed the same. On to you for engineering, Will.
And the page number has changed, but the story remains the same. So, same deal. We're attempting a new structure in engineering. We have shifted the personnel out. We're going with a contractor to provide us with engineering services and with a city engineer. And we hope that that will give us better cost containment on future capital projects.
Preston's back for the maintenance.
Once again, we moved a couple funds around. The biggest one, we have an overall $54,500 increase. Due to the new accounting software, we were able to track how funds are being spent more accurately. And we found that some of our street sweeping contract that we hire out was being charged out of different funds. So we needed to account for that and be able to cover that increase out of stormwater, as is what the requirement is based off of the TMDL that we have. So the $54,000 is to cover that contract, and also a little bit of an increase for our cartograph and some of the other software programs we have. And then there's a $500 increase in your utilities, to try to keep up with PGE's rates.
That in the maintenance, you're talking about the maintenance agreement?
Yes.
Do you expect to next year to go back or is it just that the numbers were off?
So they were getting paid out of streets and some other funds. So we are putting them all here so we can actually accurately track how much it costs to determine at what point is it more cost effective to either do it in-house or not.
Got it. So next year you'll have a better idea, and that's why you budgeted extra to make sure that it's covered. And we may see a difference here, or not, depending on what you find.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Preston, that the money was actually showing up in a different fund, and so you just moved it.
I did.
So it's not an increase in cost rate. Okay.
Okay. And then, the reserves here, we have just the 301 is the capital rollover funds, again, for the vehicle replacement for public works maintenance related to the capital outlay on page 112. So those are the funds that he's saving for on that vehicle plan that he talked about, and those funds, whatever is not spent, are gonna roll into this contingency for the future for saving. Any questions on stormwater? All right. We'll move on to stormwater SDC, which is on page 115. And then again, for the revenues, I adjusted it based on closer to what we're actually been receiving, which is closer to the 90,000. We don't get a ton of stormwater SDC revenue. And then the interest, we stayed the same. The transfers out are related to the capital projects that we saw on Fund 4 that we looked at already. And then everything else is just living in the contingency funds for future use of spending. Any questions? Yeah, it's a smaller fund that we have for stormwater. Any questions on the SDC? All right. We'll move on to street fund. And this is page 119.
Just, just a clarifying thing too, you probably see the information about the emergency management. That is not all funded out of the street fund. That is split between the enterprise funds and the street fund. So it's all captured within all four of those.
Yeah, we just included the narrative in the street fund. So for the revenues on the street fund, we had a slight increase on the street curb permits, just based on what we've been seeing. The gas tax is the biggest revenue in here. We had a really slight increase that we saw was about 2% from the state shared revenue. So that was a surprise, but it's still not enough to cover our maintenance fees that we have for streets, unfortunately. And then, of course, we have the tough in here, and based on the rate review, that had a 17.5% increase for next year. So you'll see that those revenues reflected in that line item. And then subsequently, we increased interest also based on the extra revenue. Streets engineering. Oh, the tough fee is, it says, local fee, transportation, public safety. Yeah, it's just what it's called, yeah.
And of course, for those who suffered through the rates meetings, you'll know that part of the reason for the large tough increase was there were a couple of years when there was no tough increase. So our purchasing power fell behind. So to move on to the streets engineering page, the page number has changed, but the story remains the same. And we shall see if council sees less change orders connected to large capital projects, then my plan has succeeded. And if council does not see that effect, then the plan has not worked. So we will find out.
One more.
Yeah, one more time with Preston coming back.
Okay, for streets, we merged only one account in here, and then, there was two accounts that went up. Our general utilities fee, charge or account went up $1,000. And then our street light, went up 35,000. As PGE's rates are going up, we have to be able to cover all the electricity for all the street lights. And, Katie and I worked together, and that was a projection that should keep us in the positive with that number.
Can I ask when PGE rates are going up? Because you guys keep referring to that they will, but we already are in 2024. What is the turnover, the time for that?
Our streetlights are a little bit different. So this one, we've already are seeing the increase on the streetlights. Yeah.
We had a meeting with PG, major account representative, our rate increase. We had a, yeah, I know. We had a meeting with our PGE account manager. Our PGE rates have increased 9.9% overall. They're anticipating a 7.5% ask in this next year, next fiscal
Yeah,
year.
in addition.
In addition to the 9.9
Yeah.
that they currently have. We have completed about 95% of the LED conversion of the streetlights. There's Schedule A, B, and C. Schedule C, we own them, maintain them, we pay them for electricity, which only about 15% of the lights are ours. We're trying to work towards a B, which is they maintain them. We own them, but they maintain them and we pay for them. What that does is reduce our expenses for electricity by switching to LEDs. The remaining ones are the period lights along Springbrook Road, the pendant lights out by the Allison, Crestview Drive, and the Acorn lights along 99 and Hancock Street, which are scheduled to be done this fall.
Is the PGE increase, is this all tied to wildfire and all the insurance stuff that's going on?
When asked specifically, they said no.
Uh-huh. And you said, well, what's it tied to?
And I said, cost increases. But they have said no. It's just to make their system safer. So.
Oh, so this transition to LED is less maintenance on your system, right? Is that what you're saying? Sorry, I know that, but from a switch the bulb type of.
It'll be less maintenance also. They still maintain it for us. But the LEDs are lasting 10 plus
Right.
years, as long as they don't get hit by a vehicle.
Right. Okay,
Under the old high pressure sodium lights, they would come in, they replace the entire light head and charge us $1,000. About every 5 to 7 years. LEDs, 20 years. They lose one bulb, it still loses very little light output, so they're estimated to last 20 years. And under the agreement, they replace them.
Got
and
it,
don't charge us for it.
got it. Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Wouldn't LED be less electricity use?
It is, but, as he said, 9.9% is the average rate increase for the city overall. But the streetlights are actually in a higher pay rate, so they're going up anywhere from 11 to 15%. So it's just the average for the city overall cost is 9.9.
And if you remember, we've added several large subdivisions with a lot of streetlights.
And then just to finish off the street fund, we have on page 122, we just have the transfers out, which are actually all coming from the TUF fund this year. And then we just have some of the contingencies left for mostly the TUF. And then as you can see, we had to cut some of the vehicle replacements that we had last year for the street fund, just because we're trying to rebuild this fund back up. Any questions on the street fund?
No, move along.
And real quick, I'd like to introduce Karen Tarmichael. Karen is our emergency management coordinator, which again, I spoke about it a little bit earlier, being through all of our funds, so.
Okay. I think this is the last fund for tonight. We have Fund 42, the Street SDC Fund on page 123. So again, for the revenues, based on the new SDC methodology and what we've been receiving, the revenues for this fund decreased for next year quite a bit, which also decreased the interest that we have in here. And that's the primary change for the revenue side. We have a small transfer out, which we already saw on, again, Fund 4 for the capital projects. And then the rest of it is just in contingency, waiting for a project that we can spend it on.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Will.
Normally city managers don't know this much about their own budget, so you should feel good. So the thing I just wanted to mention is the SDC funds, in case you wonder why you saw a pattern where one went up slightly and most of them went down. That's because, for those who don't know, we recalibrated the entire system development charge model this year. We actually removed some projects from the SDC model that we did not think were likely to occur within the 30-year planning horizon. So the recalibration of the model is why you've seen those changes. And now we own our own intellectual property, which I'm very proud of. So if you would like a copy of the SDC models that we built ourselves with community input, street level democracy right here, folks, we can send you those models.
Thank you, Will. Any other questions?
Can I ask a general procedural question? So in the very beginning, we had a public comment and she was requesting, if I recall, $10,000 for the NDC. Does that enter into any discussion among us or what? Where does that go? Yes, that's my question. I mean, where do we consider it? At what point? Or is everything in here fairly set?
I think, and I may be wrong, so if I'm wrong, you can correct me. I think it's a decision of the city council to approve or not any funds that, or this would be a grant. right? So it is not up to the budget committee to approve that. She came in and she spoke about it. However, for us, we are here to approve the budget review, ask questions, any other funds that the city may or may not grant. It is a city council decision that they will vote on and deliberate on, and we do not participate.
Okay.
And
thank
we
you.
do have some funds available that are in the budget for that purpose. Was that what you were gonna say? Okay, yeah, there's, in the city council's budget, they have that community support line, which some of that we do have earmarked for the Poisdorf sister city visit, but there is other funds in there that could be used for this purpose and has been used for purposes similar to this in the past. We also have Fund 14, which could be looked at as well. So for council to consider.
Thank you for the question, yes. Any other on Fund 42, which is what we were looking at? Move, that's it?
Yep, that's all the presentations we had tonight that we need to get through.
All right,
Can I ask one last question?
yes.
On the compost, it's super cheap. I mean, I bought compost over there. Any way we can bump it up for, like,
That's at the pricing on compost is at the discretion of the city manager. One of the things when we built, that's in the code. But one of the things when we built the new treatment plant with the composting on there, at that time, the council wanted it to be available at a reasonable price for the community. One of the things that we are working on right now, we do need to do some work in the wastewater treatment plant this summer. And so we need to get our solids down, the amount of solids that's in there, better way to describe it. Which means we have to make more compost so that we can shut the entire process down for, say, 2 weeks, a week or 2 weeks, let it build up so that we can do the work in there. So that we're gonna have an abundance of compost this year, that we don't normally have. But again, the pricing, and we try to take a look at what the market will bear. If we can get it out the door and make money on it.
Like giving
versus
to
trying
us.
to market it too heavily. It's kind of a fine balance on there. We used to bag it. Bags cost us $6 a bag to produce, and we were selling them for $5 a bag. We stopped doing that.
What about delivery?
There could be something in the idea for delivery with delivery charges.
Sounds like a business opportunity.
Yeah.
So I'll just say this, that every year when we come to the subject of compost, it's always this fun conversations about Will's compost and how much he's gonna charge for his own compost that he's producing in the city. So go ahead and talk to us about that.
The irony is not lost on your city manager that the one person of all of us, I suspect, who hates gardening and who only mows the lawn when his wife tells him it has to be done is Mr. Will. And yet I feel that this group would be supportive of a hike in the price of compost. That's what I'm detecting.
I think, yeah.
It's a city council decision, right, on how much the compost is going. His decision. Oh, run with it? Great. So,
If that were also met with expanded operating hours, and availability of compost, because that's part of the problem, is it's only open and available midweek. So many citizens who are busy during that window of time can't come purchase compost. And I don't know why that is, but that's a you problem, Will.
If I may counter, there is the possibility of drone delivery, which we have not looked into at all.
No.
We have tried weekend compost sales and one person shows up 3 times, same guy. Yeah, but it is a balancing act of what can we charge to get it out the gate before we charge too much and it builds up, because we only have so much room.
It's very unappealing, the thought of shoveling. If there was a tractor or something that could dump it into a truck, I would be much more apt to.
We have,
because
we
I
have a
don't- I don't-
loader. You show up,
I just-
they will load your truck.
No, that's free, bag free, that's it.
I just don't want to touch it. So if I could, you got a way to get it in the truck, I would happily go buy a lot.
Bring your truck, they will load you.
I just want to know why every year. and I've
Every year.
Done budget, how, 6, 8 years, we spend more time on compost than any other topic.
It is a fun topic. So I,
We like
uh,
to shoot the shit, that's it.
so let me talk a little bit about, our next meeting here is going to be on May 14th. And I'm gonna put this statement here before I adjourn, which is, no, I don't have to, okay. So I guess after all this conversation, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.